This cup is 1,700 years old, and it changes color. In 1990, scientists finally figured out why. Buried inside the glass, invisible to the naked eye, were particles of gold and silver ground down to 50 nanometers. That is 1,000th the size of a grain of salt. We call that nanotechnology. Romans were doing it in 300 AD. Medieval sword makers were forging carbon nanotubes into their blades 600 years before carbon nanotubes were discovered. We only found out in 2006. Roman harbor walls have been underwater for 2,000 years, and they are getting stronger. Scientists cracked why in 2023. There is a 1,600-year-old iron pillar in India that has never rusted. Not once. Modern iron rusts in years, and in 50 AD, a Greek engineer built a working steam engine. Nobody understood what it was. The Industrial Revolution happened 1,700 years later. 5 creations built by ancient civilizations, using science they could not have named. Here is what they actually knew. The Lycurgus cup, Roman nanotechnology 300 AD, understood in the 1990s. It is the year 300 AD. The Roman Empire is at its height. Somewhere in a Roman workshop, an artisan is making a cup. 700 grams of ordinary glass carved with the myth of King Lycurgus and Dionysus. Beautiful, but that is not why we are talking about it. Hold it under normal light, jade green. Lush like an emerald. Put a light source behind it, blood red. Same cup, same glass, same room. The carved scene on its surface, King Lycurgus entangled in Dionysus's vines, rendered in extraordinary three-dimensional detail. The British Museum acquired it in the 1950s from the Rothschild family. Scientists admired it, photographed it, could not explain it. Emperor Hadrian gifted cups like this to his own relatives. His letter, still preserved, calls them cups that change color and are variegated. Not one person, across 16 centuries, could explain how. In 1990, researchers put fragments of similar Roman glass under an electron microscope. What they found stopped them cold. Inside the glass, gold and silver particles 50 to 100 nanometers in diameter, distributed at a precise ratio of 7 parts silver to 3 parts gold. Smaller than the wavelength of visible light, 1,000 of them fit across a single grain of table salt. When light hits particles that small, electrons oscillate and scatter different wavelengths. Green from the front, red from the back. Surface plasmon resonance, a principle of 21st century nanotechnology. The Romans were doing it in 300 AD. The concentration is too precise, the particles too uniform, too deliberate. The published study concluded the Romans knew what they were doing. No word for nanoparticles, no concept of electrons, but they had figured it out through centuries of accumulated craft knowledge. Then it was lost. This is the only complete surviving example in the world. Not one other piece of intact dichroic Roman glass exists. The knowledge was never written down, and it disappeared with the craftsman who carried it. In 2013, researcher Gang Logan Liu at the University of Illinois built a biosensor using the exact same principle, a device the size of a postage stamp, containing 1 billion miniature versions of the Lycurgus cup, 100 times more sensitive than any existing nanoplasmonic sensor. It detects disease markers in blood, identifies dangerous chemicals, a potential sub-$10 diagnostic tool deployable anywhere in the world. That technology was sitting in a London museum for 60 years. Invented in 300 AD by a craftsman who never knew what he had made. Damascus steel, medieval swords with carbon nanotubes, discovered in 2006. In 1191, during the Third Crusade, European knights came face to face with a weapon they had never encountered before. Saladin tossed a silk scarf into the air, let it drift onto his blade, and it split in two before it landed. European swords were strong but rigid. Damascus swords were both razor-sharp and flexible, a combination that should have been metallurgically impossible. Damascus swords were made from wootz steel, a high-carbon material from southern India that, at 1.5% carbon, should have been too brittle to use as a weapon. And yet these blades held a perfect edge while flexing under impact without snapping, doing both things that steel is not supposed to do at the same time. The recipe was never written down, passed hand to hand across generations of master smiths who kept it secret. The surface of every genuine Damascus blade bore the same legendary flowing water pattern, beautiful, distinctive, and completely unexplained for centuries. Around 1750, the last masters died, and the secret died with them. Buried, unwritten, gone. For 250 years, metallurgists across 3 centuries tried and failed to replicate it. In 2006, a team at the Technical University of Dresden dissolved a fragment of a 17th-century Damascus blade in hydrochloric acid and examined what remained under an electron microscope. Inside the ancient metal, they found carbon nanotubes, perfectly formed cylindrical structures that science believed it had only just discovered. The nanotubes were coiled around brittle cementite nanowires inside the blade, acting as a natural atomic-level shock absorber, the exact mechanism that made the impossible sword possible. We thought we discovered carbon nanotubes in 1991. Medieval blacksmiths were forging them into swords in 900 AD. Despite knowing about the nanotubes, despite electron microscopes and 21st century metallurgy, we still cannot fully replicate a Damascus sword. The smiths had no idea what was happening inside the metal. They only knew it worked. And we still can't do what they did. Roman concrete. Self-healing underwater cement. Science cracked in 2017 and 2023. There is a Roman harbor wall sitting on the floor of the Mediterranean Sea, underwater for 2,000 years, and it is getting stronger. Meanwhile, modern Portland cement coastal structures show serious deterioration within decades, cracking, spalling, corroding from the inside out. Roman marine concrete was made from volcanic ash called pozzolana, sourced from the town of Pozzuoli near Mount Vesuvius, mixed with lime, seawater, and chunks of rock. Roman workers mixed volcanic ash, quicklime, and seawater together, the components reacting visibly, steaming, hardening into something no modern formula has matched. They deliberately lowered the freshly mixed concrete directly into the sea to set underwater, knowing empirically that it would harden. In 2017, University of Utah geologist Marie Jackson examined core samples of Roman marine concrete and found something extraordinary happening inside the ancient material. Saltwater percolating through the concrete over centuries dissolved minerals from the volcanic ash, and those minerals migrated into forming cracks. There they crystallized into a rare mineral called aluminous tobermarite, interlocking crystal structures growing inside the cracks and sealing them shut from within. The same seawater that destroys modern concrete is, in Roman concrete, the repair mechanism. The ocean is not the enemy of the structure, it is the maintenance crew. For years, archaeologists assumed the white chunks scattered through Roman concrete were evidence of sloppy mixing. They were wrong. The Romans deliberately used quicklime, raw, violently exothermic calcium oxide, mixed in while still hot, at temperatures no modern concrete specification would allow. This created lime clasts embedded throughout the mix like time capsules. When a crack forms and water seeps in, the calcium dissolves, flows into the gap, and recrystallizes as limestone, sealing it shut. The MIT team cracked samples of their Roman-inspired concrete in the lab. Within 2 weeks, the cracks had completely healed. The control samples made without quicklime never healed at all. Vitruvius documented with clear satisfaction that their concrete hardened even when submerged underwater, noting it as remarkable with no idea why it worked. The concrete that will outlast every building on Earth today was perfected 2,000 years ago by people who had no idea how it worked. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, rust-proof iron from 415 AD, metallurgy understood in the 20th century. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, 7 meters tall, 6 tons of iron, has been standing in the open air of Delhi for over 1,600 years. It has never rusted. Not once. Not anywhere. Not even slightly. Your car will rust in 10 years. This pillar has been outside, completely unprotected, since the year 415 AD. The Eiffel Tower has to be repainted every 7 years to stop it corroding. This pillar has never been touched. Scientists have been studying it since 1912 and could not explain it. In 1969, Erich von Däniken cited it in Chariots of the Gods as evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, because the lack of rust seemed so impossible it had to be alien technology. The inscription on its base, written in Sanskrit, describes it as a flagstaff dedicated to the god Vishnu, commemorating King Chandra, almost certainly Chandragupta II of the Gupta Empire. Ancient Indian smiths shaped it using forge welding, heating and hammering the iron over and over, using cassia auriculata charcoal that preserved the crucial phosphorus content of the ore. Modern iron contains 0.05% phosphorus. The iron pillar contains 1%, 20 times the modern standard. That difference is everything. Ancient smiths used specific local woods, including cassia auriculata, whose chemical properties preserved the phosphorus during smelting, knowledge carried empirically, never written down. That phosphorus reacted with air and moisture over centuries to form misowite, an ultra-thin compound of iron, oxygen, and hydrogen that seals the surface completely from moisture. In 1,600 years, that protective layer has grown to the thickness of a single human hair and has not let a single oxygen molecule through. The explanation finally came in 2003 from researchers at IIT Kanpur, who identified the phosphorus-induced passivation mechanism that had baffled scientists for nearly a century. The Industrial Revolution deliberately removed phosphorus from iron to enable faster mass production. Choosing speed and volume over the extraordinary longevity the ancient process produced, they built it to honor a god. And 16 centuries later, it stands unchanged in a city of 30 million, surrounded by infrastructure that will crumble in 50 years. Hero's steam engine, the first steam turbine, 50 AD. Its potential only understood 1,700 years later. In Alexandria, Egypt, around 50 AD, the greatest center of learning the ancient world ever produced, a mathematician and engineer named Hero was at work. Hero wrote down the instructions for a device he called the Aeolipile, a hollow metal sphere on a pivot with two bent tubes projecting from its sides above a sealed cauldron of water. The device was beautifully made, every component fitted with precision, waiting for the water to boil. When the water boiled, steam rose through a pipe into the sphere and pressure built. The steam blasted out of the two bent tubes, and the sphere began to spin faster and faster, powered entirely by steam. Hero listed it as number 50 in a catalog of 78 pneumatic devices. One curiosity among many, no more remarkable on the page than the others. It was treated as a novelty, a temple trick, something to amaze visitors. And nobody in the room saw a revolution in the spinning sphere. Then the Roman Empire declined. The Library of Alexandria burned, and the knowledge was scattered. For 1,700 years, the world turned without steam power. Hand tools, water mills, horse carts. The spinning sphere forgotten. In 1769, Scottish engineer James Watt patented a practical steam engine, and the world changed within a generation. Factories, railways, steamships. The Industrial Revolution rewired every society on Earth in under a century, all powered by steam pressure creating rotational motion. The principle behind Watt's engine, steam pressure creating rotational motion, is precisely what Hero demonstrated in 50 AD. The Roman economy ran on slave labor. When human beings can be forced to work for free, there is no economic pressure to build machines that do it for them. The device that could have changed the world sat in a catalog of curiosities, ignored because the civilization around it had no need for it yet. 5 objects, 5 civilizations. None of their makers had a theory, none wrote down a formula. They just knew it worked. A Roman cup that used nanotechnology before we had a word for it. A medieval sword containing structures we only discovered in a laboratory in 1991. Concrete that repairs itself with seawater. An iron pillar that has outlasted entire empires. A steam engine that sat unrecognized in a catalog for 17 centuries. These are not myths. They are not speculation. Every single one of them has been studied, tested, and published in peer-reviewed science. They are as real as the ground you are standing on. What I want to know is what you think. How much did ancient civilizations understand that we have simply not found yet? Were these 5 things isolated accidents of trial and error, or were they pieces of a much larger body of knowledge, most of which has been permanently lost? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you know of another ancient discovery that belongs on this list, something real, something verified, something that defies explanation, tell me. If this video made you stop and think, even once, hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it helps this kind of content reach people who would never have found it otherwise. And if you want to see more of the things history got wrong, more of the science that ancient civilizations figured out before we did, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from. The past is stranger than we were taught, and that is worth paying attention to.